My first girlfriend, Crystal, died at 16, right after I broke up with her. For a long time I thought it was just a coincidence. I felt differently when my next girlfriend, Nicole, died right after we broke up a few years later. They both died in odd circumstances. Crystal crashed her car flat sober on a straight road by herself. Nicole drowned in the bathtub after falling asleep. Both were labeled as accidents. I was never questioned by police, but plenty of people around town talked, wondered if I was cursed. I wondered the same. Then I moved away. The military took me all the way across the country and I was happy. I fell in love with a girl named Katie. Everything was good, until I went to a cousin's wedding out of town by myself. The drinks flowed. Too many. I lost control. I got in deep with a girl there I thought was too hot to not keep talking to and keep drinking with. We ended up back at my hotel room. I was too drunk to stop. We had sex and she stayed the night with me. I woke up with an instant sinking feeling of regret. I also woke up alone, but the girl whose name I couldn't even remember was in the bathroom. She was crying. I listened to her weep uncontrollably for a few moments, unsure of what to do. Then I heard glass breaking and I rushed into the bathroom. The girl from the night before was in there with a shard of broken mirror in her grasp. I begged her not to hurt herself. She screamed back at me that she loved her boyfriend and she couldn't believe what she had done and she wanted to die. Then she inexplicably started saying a name I hadn't heard in years. Hive. Hearing that name reached into the darkest recesses of my brain. Hive was a dirt poor girl in my 5th grade class. Homely. She was teased and someone who received no interest as someone anyone wanted to date. Instead she was mocked. We went too far. Someone dared me to ask out Hive and pretend to be her boyfriend for a week. I agreed to do it, trying to impress my peers. Hive seemed to have no idea the thing was a farce. She held my hand on the schoolyard and didn't seem to see the other kids snickering all the while. The worst part is I could feel she was sweet and genuine during our time together. She was a nice person. I had to get out of it. I had my friend break up with her a few days into the spoof relationship. Hive was crushed. I felt horrible. She never made eye contact with me again. One day after recess, I came back to my desk and found a piece of paper with burnt ends and found an endless abyss of vulgar and dark words scrawled all over it in black ink and pentagrams. I tried to decipher what it specifically all meant but couldn't. It just said awful things. Embarrassed and guilty, I never told anyone about it or confronted Hive about it. Hive moved away at the end of that school year. One of the girls in the class said she lived near her and thought her parents were deep into the occult, witches, spells, all that kind of stuff. I figured it was bullshit. It wasn't until I heard the woman in the bathroom screaming out her name that all those scrawled words of hate and love and darkness on that burnt paper Hive left on my desk came back into my head. That dark little girl must have cursed me and any lover that left me. Hive. The words spat out of my one-night stand in the bathroom and snatched me out of my memory dive. Then the woman took that shard of glass and ferociously sliced both of her wrists before I could even try to do anything. The girl from the wedding ended up living and she explained to everyone that she did what she did to herself and wanted to cover up for me being there to protect her own relationship, so I got lucky and no one ever found out. I know what you're thinking now though, but don't. The girl later died after her wounds were infected from the gashes. The curse was still alive. I had an easy solution to it all. I was going to marry Katie and stay with her forever. I proposed. She was a bit thrown off by the haste, but she said yes. Everything was going well. We kept going through the motions of love and prep and slow planning our wedding. I wasn't in any particular hurry. Then I came home one day and her wedding ring was resting on the kitchen counter with a note that she was leaving me. No particular reason given. She said in the note she had to stay away from me for a week so she could be clear of mind. There was no way I could make that happen. I knew I was racing a clock. I was waiting to hear that she had died every second as I drove around going to every place that she could be. I found her at her sister's house and after hours of pleading and explaining that her safety was in serious question, she finally came out and talked to me in the yard. I explained everything. I watched her face convey that she now regretted every single second of our relationship. Then she walked inside. Weeks went by without much sleep. I kept just thinking I was soon going to be invited to her funeral, and I wondered if it would be in some circumstance where people thought I might have done it to her. She showed up in the middle of the night one night with a knock on my door. I let her in, so happy to see her alive and breathing. She explained she had nearly died in 3 separate freak accidents since she left me. She believed in the curse. She could feel it inside her. She had suicidal thoughts she had never even imagined before. We had to be together. The wedding was back on. Now you're probably wondering, why did that dark little girl who I fucked with back in 5th grade do something that ultimately won me back the love of my life? Wasn't she now going to kill Katie or something? The thing was, my time away from Katie made me realize that I didn't love her. I didn't really miss her and enjoyed my time alone. I thought about my previous, dearly departed partners, and thought I loved them more than her, and I dreamed of a relationship that would truly bring it all together for me. I was cursed with a fake love forever, or I had to be okay with Katie dying. So the fake relationship I pranked that poor girl within 5th grade meant I was going to be stuck in a fake relationship for the rest of my life. Well played, Hive. I woke up and found a box of Swiss chocolates sitting on my doorstep, along with a little heart-shaped note that read, "A tasty treat for the sweetest guy I know." A married man receiving anonymous gifts is pretty damning in and of itself, but the note was all the rope my wife needed to hang me with. Melissa shuffled into the kitchen, groggy and still half asleep. Beams of sunlight gilded her lovely face as she poured herself a coffee by the window. "What's that?" she asked, casually. "You mean you didn't send these?" She slammed down her cup, snatched the card away, then turned it over, again and again. "No, seriously, who sent these?" I shrugged. Her brown, unforgettable eyes searched my face for any signs of guilt. Then, after a brief pause, she handed back the note and drained her coffee. That apathy stung, honestly. How the hell did we reach this point? How'd we go from the couple so cute our friends hated us to not giving a single shit about the other receiving love letters? Part of me wanted a big battle royale for us to scream until our lips turned blue. Hell, maybe Melissa could try cutting off my wedding ring, finger and all. At least that would prove she actually gave a shit. I tossed the chocolates into the trash. Hey, it doesn't matter who sent them, because the perfect woman's standing right here. From a side angle, I threw my arms around her waist and leaned in for a kiss. Melissa bit my bottom lip, hard enough to draw a trickle of blood, before backing away. It was the most action I'd had since Boris Johnson announced the UK lockdown. It's crazy how in 2 short years we slid from excited about trying for a baby, to rudimentary, mechanical lovemaking, to strangers under the same roof. Maybe it was my fault? Maybe we only fell into that stagnant routine because I gained half a stone and stopped surprising her with roses. The two of us worked in our home office that day, directly across from each other. My wife worked as a solicitor, me an IT consultant. Anytime our eyes met above the laptops, I tried to diffuse the awkward silence by blowing her a kiss or winking cheekily, but her mouth just remained a grim straight line. Around midday, I pulled on my headset and joined a Teams call with my coworker, Angela. "Afternoon, Angie. I've got something to show you," she said. Her camera flicked on, revealing a cute, gray kitten with 4 white paws. Meet Mittens. The little fuzzball had on a red collar which he tried to pry off using his back leg. When Angie scooped him up, he twisted like a fish, furiously attempting to wriggle free. "Who let you get a cat?" I asked, sarcastically. "That thing'll be dead in." Normally Angela and I enjoyed a bit of banter, nothing flirty, just innocent jokes, but my voice trailed off as the mechanical clacks of Melissa's keyboard suddenly ceased. The tension in the room swelled. Veins throbbed along the forehead of the angry face glaring at me. Had the chocolate secretly bothered my wife? Was there still a glimmer of hope for our rotting carcass of a relationship? I cleared my throat, made my voice all serious, and said into the microphone, "Let's pull up those firewall logs, see if we can figure out where the traffic's getting blocked." That evening, Melissa only made dinner for herself, not me, and later in bed, since she decided to face the mirrored closet door on the far side of the room, I clasped my hand around her stomach and tried to draw her warm body towards mine. A drilling elbow to the ribs torpedoed that idea. Over the next few weeks, cozying up to her felt like cuddling a clump of jagged nettles. One night I joined her in the lounge to watch a TV show about boats, but the second my ass hit the cushion, she stood up and said, "I'm done, put on what you like." Another time, I surprised her with 2 tickets to Ed Sheeran plus reservations at her favorite restaurant. She took her mom. One Friday afternoon at work, as Angela and I sat side by side parsing through Kubernet's logs, my wonderful spouse stopped by for our weekly lunch date. Even at our lowest point, neither of us dared skip a luncheon. They were a holy sacrament, the life support system for a terminally ill marriage. And neither of us wanted to pull the plug. Yet, even though there was no affair going on, I instinctively moved my chair away from Angela before greeting the wifey. It was all smiles and pleasantries between the pair while I fetched my jacket, but something about Melissa's expression made my stomach queasy. Quickly I ushered her out through reception into a nearby cafe, where a young couple at the next table over held hands while scanning their menus. I couldn't help feel a pang of jealousy. The romance in my own relationship had run away. But maybe, just maybe, there was a way to get it back. As I quietly munched on a portion of grapefruit the next morning, a bouquet of pink oriental lilies arrived by special delivery. The accompanying note read, "Michael, I'm like a flower and you're the sunshine." When I closed the door on the deliveryman, Melissa was already directly behind me, her hands balled into fists. "Let me guess, another gift from your secret admirer." Air quotes accompanied the word secret. "I swear I've no idea who sent these." "Of course you don't." We argued back and forth, our voices growing steadily louder and bolder, until, a little condescendingly, she said, "I don't even care about the affair, just quit lying." What's that old legal expression? Innocent until proven guilty? I threw a shit-eating grin. Red spots across Melissa's cheeks subsided as she took 3 deep breaths. "You know what, I'm done." I tossed the flowers aside, circling her before she could storm off, then I stared down my nose at the top of her blonde head. "What do you mean you're done? You wanna have an affair, you go right ahead." The words came boiling out. "I'm not having an affair." For a moment we stood there, her warm, furious breath spreading out across my face. Next thing I knew we were going at it. Fingernails scraped my eye, hot palms tugged my hair and shoved me into a wall. At some point a side desk toppled over, and then a porcelain lamp shattered across the floor. Melissa's friends once warned me about her temper, something about her ex-boyfriend sending his ex a flirty Facebook message, which resulted in her repeatedly headbutting the poor girl at a house party, enough times to land her in ICU. Well, now the temper had resurfaced. And it intrigued me. After our steamy encounter, Melissa quickly got dressed, climbed into her car, and sped off. Still sticky with sweat and practically in need of an oxygen mask, I booted up my laptop rather than venture into the office. My wife didn't make it home until late that night, and she wouldn't say a single word about where she'd spent the day. The following morning, at the office, there was no sign of Angela. She finally answered her phone on my 6th wellness call. "Mittens is gone." After 10 minutes of frantic back and forth, Angela composed herself long enough to explain she'd found Mittens' red collar, just the collar, on the welcome mat outside her apartment. No big deal, the little critter hated that thing. He'd turn up sooner or later, right? Over the next few weeks, things got better between Melissa and I. Slightly. Were we going at it like newlyweds? No. However, after shaking off some cobwebs, the passion came storming back. We experimented with some fun new positions like the dancing pink flamingo and 2 folded pretzels. Soon this humble IT administrator looked pale and wilted from all the lovemaking, all the furniture oozed with a thick soup of bodily fluids, and sometimes there was even a 6-inch recess in the mattress from where I'd lay on my back during a particularly spirited session. The idea of an oncoming divorce disappeared right off the map. Things were finally looking up. But then, within 3 weeks, we both fell back to the old ways. No passion, zero intimacy. The marital bed may as well have been cordoned off by police tape. Maybe part of her still suspected I was having an affair, despite me repeatedly insisting that it wasn't the case. A third gift soon arrived, this fancy male beauty and grooming kit. The note said, "To cover up the musk after we work up a sweat." Work up a sweat? My beloved screamed, smashing the little glass jars of cologne as she marched through the house. Strong-smelling dark puddles soon covered the walls and floor in every room. In my man cave, she dangled the final bottle directly above my PC, my expensive, wonderful, top-of-the-line gaming rig. Just before she could dump the contents over the second love of my life, I seized her arm and steered her into the wall, pinning her body in place with mine. Quickly her tongue found my mouth. Then a pair of legs wrapped around my waist, tighter than a python. Everything else is a bit of a blur. Sometime later, Melissa pulled on her clothes, climbed into her car, and drove off. All day, my brain refused to focus on one subject for even 5 seconds. Those gifts acted like a romantic catalyst, but things never took long to fizzle out. There had to be a way to jumpstart our love life and keep it chugging along healthily. Maybe we needed an in-depth heart-to-heart? These childish games had gone on long enough. It was time for action. Time to show her what she meant to me. That evening, Angie's parents called wanting to know whether their daughter phoned in sick that day. She didn't, I said. But she's been missing tons of work since Mittens disappeared. I promised to let them know the moment I heard anything. Sometime after midnight, Melissa returned home and climbed into bed. I placed my head on her shoulder, my hands interlocking around her smooth stomach. Then I pushed my lips right up against her ear and whispered, "I love you." Maybe I don't say that enough, but it's true. And I'd never, ever dream of cheating on you. I know I haven't been the best husband lately, and I'm sorry. I promise to do better. I'll start going back to the gym. And I'll surprise you with roses again. All I want is for things to go back to the way they were. In the mirrored closet door, I watched her hands close over mine. We lay together, our chests went up and down in rhythmic heaves. And somehow, I knew there was a glimmer of hope for us. That things would turn out alright. But then, the very next morning, another gift arrived. This one caught me off guard. It was a little white box wrapped in a pink bow. "Another present from your admirer?" Melissa asked, making no effort to mask her excitement as she watched from across the kitchen. After spooning a portion of soggy Weetabix into her mouth, she said, "Go on. Open it." "You sent this," I said. "Didn't you?" She made a big, over-exaggerated show of protesting her innocence. "I don't know what you're talking about. You're the one with the admirer." Okay, I thought. I'll play along. Hell, maybe this'll turn into a sexy treasure hunt. I slowly untied the bow and opened the box. And when I saw what was in there, cornflakes nearly slid up my gut. It was a severed finger, surrounded by packaging coated in dried, crusty blood. As I dropped the box and backed away, the detached digit dropped onto the floor and rolled toward Melissa, stopping halfway between us. "Oh," she said, her voice flat and bored. "Is that a finger?" "What the fuck?" I shouted, between heavy gasps. The oxygen in the room grew thick and heavy. I looked from the perfectly composed lady standing opposite me to the blood-smeared appendage, back and forth. Was that thing real? It couldn't be real. Melissa said, "Something wrong? You liked the other presents." "The other presents weren't severed fingers," I rasped, voice cracking. "You're right. Maybe this whole secret admirer thing has gotten out of hand?" Casual as you like, she tossed her empty bowl into the sink and tried to stroll out of the room, but I cut in front of her, skirting her gift along the way, and gripped both her shoulders so she had to look at me. "What the fuck did you do?" "What do you mean, darling? Where did you get that? Tell me right now or I'm calling the police." She grinned. "And tell them what? You're the one with the secret admirer. Remember?" Now terrified of the woman I married, I rushed outside and climbed into my car, then drove to a coffee shop and sat in the corner booth, dizzy with shock. There was only one person that finger could belong to, and Angela still wasn't answering her phone. I checked in with her parents, careful to avoid any explicit mention of the package, and asked them to call me the second they heard from her. This wasn't happening. No way Melissa could do such a thing. But then I thought more about her neutral reaction to the finger, not to mention the sour look she gave Angie in the office that day. To think I wanted to have a baby with that psycho. Questions shoulder-charged their way to the forefront of my mind. Should I go to the police? A fucking finger arrived by post, of course I should. But what would I say? "My wife sent the finger, officer." No, I can't prove it. What's what? She says I've been having an affair? You think I killed my lover to protect my marriage? I felt helpless as a poisoned fly in a spider's web. Clearly, Melissa's feelings for me had come surging back the more we rekindled, which resulted in her jealous nature rearing its ugly head, which resulted in this situation. I needed proof of what she'd done. A confession about what happened to Angie. But how could I get it? After a long, sleepless night watching woodlice crawl across the ceiling of a cheap hotel room, I returned home, around about the time my wife usually started her day. My phone was secretly recording in my trouser pocket. In the kitchen, I gently took her by the hands. Honey, I love you. I love you too. Is there anything you need to tell me? About what? About anything? I'm not sure what you mean. Melissa, there's a detached finger in the fucking bin. Yeah, and don't think I've forgot. Whatever crazy kinks you and your admirer are into, count me out. Just then, as if on cue, somebody knocked the front door. Sounds like another package, she said, a devilish grin flashing across her face. My heart thudded wildly in my chest. Another delivery? What would it be this time? A severed head? A still beating heart? With dread in the pit of my stomach I opened the door to an irate delivery man who sneered and said, "Took you long enough." He handed me a stylus to sign for a package, one roughly the size of a microwave and heavy enough to have been harboring an entire human skull. I placed the box on the lounge table and stared at it fixedly until my wonderful spouse came and stood behind me, one hand clamped around the back of my neck. "Go on, open it." The muscles in my legs would not stop quivering, so I sat down and tore apart the cardboard with my bare hands. Inside lay another box, this one neatly gift-wrapped. Melissa chuckled, her cold claws massaging my shoulders. "Keep going." I opened that second box, revealing a pile of rocks that had weighed the package down. In the center sat a rectangular carton the size and shape of a ballpoint pen. "Fooled you." Practically giddy with excitement, she let her bony arms encase my chest. She pushed her lips right up against my left ear, but down on the lobe, then whispered, "Last one. I promise." Clammy breaths raced along my spine, down toward the pit of my stomach where they sloshed about uneasily. I untied the bow and lifted the top off the box. Inside lay a folded-up note on a bed of brown, crinkle-cut packaging paper. The note said, "Michael, I know things have been tense lately, but I want you to know I love you dearly, and there's nobody I'd rather take this journey with. Your loving wife, Melissa." My fingers plunged into the paper shreds, into the terrifying unknown, and fished out a pregnancy test with 2 blue lines running across the little screen. Without warning, Melissa unloaded a barrage of kisses upon my cheek. "Surprise. You're gonna be a daddy." Her fingers laced with mine and cupped my palm flat against her belly. As my wife chattered away, already planning how to decorate the nursery and rapidly cycling through potential baby names, seconds seemed to stretch into hours. "Finally," she said, "I'm gonna go tell my mom." Then she disappeared into the next room. I took a deep breath, slowly exhaled, and then sunk into the chair. This was a seriously fucked up situation. I only mailed myself those gifts to reignite the spark in our marriage. They were supposed to spice things up to rile Melissa up and get us back into the throes of passion. I never dreamed things might spiral out of control like this. Now Angela's missing, probably dead, we are expecting a baby. And I have no idea what to do. www.reddit.com web link